Well, I had one other thought. I turned off the camera and then I went back and looked at it from across the room. And actually, it's really quite dramatic just the way it is. So you always have choices. Do you stop or do you continue? And so it's a challenge, right? Because I think I look back and I thought, wow, this is actually going good. It's got a beautiful harmony. It's well balanced. It has some movements. It's very messy. Um, and I have to decide. That's the artist's choice. It's a conversation, right? You're having a conversation with the canvas. Okay, I see this. This looks pretty, but and so I'm going to think about it a bit and continue listening to my music and decide. Of course, for me, it's about just keep going, right? Keep going. Um, there's nothing to lose. It's just a painting in the end, right? And what's important is the experience. So I've got to think about this a little bit, and I'll let you know, or you can watch and see what I decide. But I'll probably keep going. Bye. Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. What have I done and where am I going? As you can see, I applied darks, and then I started applying some more reds and oranges because I felt like they had faded to the back. And I am applying them in a mixed kind of mixing them up, adding a little bit here, a little bit there, so that there's harmony to the whole painting. Now, remember, sometimes you have to go in the wrong direction before you go in the right direction. And I realize that it's a little heavy on red and a little heavy on the orange. But what's going to happen is I'm dancing back and forth. Remember? First I was really bright, then I darkened it down, and then I got really bright, and now I'm probably going to darken it down. If you remember earlier in an earlier taping, I had lots of grays, and I'm going to pull some more grays in to ground this piece. All right. It is very bright, and there's a lot of movement going on. So if you remember, this piece I did in the last few days, it has a very similar color palette, but look how structured and rigid it is. It wants to be very mathematical and like a stacked building blocks. This painting, this painting wants to move. It wants to move all over the place. And so I realized there's two things you can go with this. I could let it just be a very moving painting. Little Chris, he likes to tag it down. You tie it down a little bit. And I tie a painting like this down by giving it some unity of background, or maybe if you can see here, I'm starting to find a line going across. Maybe drawing a line through it, something that will hold it in place. I like the movement, but I also like a sense of place. I want it to hold still. And so I might have partial lines. You can see I'm kind of trying to decide, where do I tie it down? Do I go all the way up horizontal, or I could go in this direction? And you can see I'm also tying it down. Do you see what I mean when I say this is tied down? The shapes are moving around, and yet it's holding to the edge. This is a Virginia Cobb technique that I learned from my mentor in her book. When she does work with nature, she says that you want to tie it down. And so she showed me that, and I learned from her, maybe just from watching. And I've taken it into the abstract world. So I am going to take a pause, and then I'm going to record again and add some grays and try to isolate the shapes more and perhaps tie it down a little bit more.
Thanks again for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Whether you're watching this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or iHeartRadio, make sure you choose the subscribe button so that you will receive updates when new segments are released. Most importantly, be still, listen, and know that you are a spiritual artist.